They drag him through the dust of the broken city, his arms shackled with bands that burned against his skin, and the laughter of the alien warriors echoed around him. Towering figures with armor like molten silver and eyes like shattered glass, their leader stepped forward, her presence making the others bow slightly. A woman tall and terrible, her face marked with the sigils of conquest, her hair a fall of midnight iron. She walked to him, slowly savoring the moment, and when she reached him she spat a thick glob of dark venom at his feet and called him slave, her voice a lash, her hand striking his cheek as if he were nothing, and the others roared with savage glee, but he only looked at her, his eyes steady, his body still, his heart slowing, his breath deepening, for he had waited for this moment. He had let them capture him, he had let them bind him, he had let them bring him here into the heart of their stronghold, because he had only needed 5 seconds to end it all. The warrior woman sneered at him, speaking in their tongue words meant to humiliate him, dragging him forward by the chain around his neck, lifting his chin with the edge of her blade, forcing him to meet her gaze as she proclaimed him beneath her, beneath them all. But he did not flinch, he did not speak, he only listened to the rhythm of her words, the beat of her heart, the shifting of the ground beneath his feet, the weight of the chain in her hand. And in that suspended breath between her next insult and the next cheer of the watching soldiers, he moved faster than thought, faster than the eye could follow, faster than the mind could comprehend. The chain snapped taut, and his body spun with it, a whip of brutal force. Her blade dropped clattering against the stone, and her knees buckled before she even understood he had touched her. He was behind her in the next heartbeat, his hand closed around the back of her neck, the pressure precise and unstoppable, the strength that none of them had guessed lying coiled within him, unleashed like the storm they had never seen coming. 1 second her knee struck the ground, and her mouth opened in a cry that never came to seconds. Her arms flailed weakly, trying to rise, but his grip was iron, and her strength meant nothing against it. 3 seconds, the others began to move, reaching for weapons, shouting orders, but too late to slow to. Doomed for seconds, he wrenched the warrior woman around, forcing her to kneel before him, her own weapon now in his hand, a blade so sharp it sang in the air. And 5 seconds, he crushed her pride, crushed her will, crushed the myth of her invincibility in the eyes of her soldiers, who now stood frozen, unsure of whether to fight or flee their commander, defeated so utterly, so quickly, so completely by the one they had mocked and scorned and named slave. He stood above her now, the chain still in his hand, the blade resting lightly against her throat, her eyes wide with shock and disbelief, her mouth trembling with unsaid words, and around them silence fell thick and heavy. Not a single warrior moved, not a single breath was dared, for the world itself seemed to hold its breath. He did not speak, he did not need to speak. His victory was in the crushed pride of the woman kneeling at his feet, his power undeniable, a storm waiting to break. He dropped the chain, letting it clatter on the ground like a broken promise, and with a small flick of his wrist he sent the blade spinning into the stone floor, embedding it deep as a marker of the moment when they had lost everything, when their greatest warrior, their fierce, untouchable leader, had been brought low in 5 heartbeats, and the silence remained thick and heavy, wrapping around them like chains that none of them could break. Slowly the warrior woman lifted her head, staring at him with a mixture of rage and something deeper, something raw and fearful. She knew it was over, she knew she was broken before him, and she hated him for it, and she feared him for it. And somewhere deep within her twisted soul she respected him for it. She opened her mouth to call him slave again, but the word died on her tongue, shriveled and meaningless now, and he spoke for the first time, his voice low and steady, and filled with a power that could not be denied. "You are the slave now," he said, and with those words a shudder passed through the gathered warriors, a new truth written in the air around them in blood and broken pride. And he turned from her then, walking through the ranks of the silent, defeated warriors, not a hand raised against him, not a whisper of defiance left among them. And as he vanished into the mists beyond their broken stronghold, a new legend was born, one that would be whispered in fear and awe across 1,000 worlds. She sat alone in the shattered hall, the throne toppled, the banners torn, the fires guttering low, casting shadows that danced and twisted like the broken dreams of her people. She could still Feel his hand at her neck, the weight of his gaze, the truth he had carved into her soul. She was no longer a conqueror, no longer a queen of warriors, no longer untouchable. She was something else now, something lesser. But as the long dark hours crept by and the wounded stars watched from above, a new thought grew in her mind, not of hatred, not of vengeance, but of change, of rebirth, of rising from the ruins, not to rule with chains and blades, but to build something that could last, something that could endure beyond pride and cruelty. She rose slowly, her body aching, her spirit raw and fragile, but alive in a way it had never been before. She would find him again, not to defeat him, not to destroy him, but to follow him, for he had shown her what strength truly was, not the strength to crush and enslave, but the strength to free and to forgive. And as the first pale light of dawn touched the horizon, she stepped into it, leaving behind the hall of broken thrones and shattered pride, a woman no longer a slave to her past, walking toward a future she could not yet name, but would claim with her own two hands. And so the legend ended, not with chains and blades, but with a broken warrior woman choosing at last to be free.